Sean didn't phone any executive sessions in, did he?
He's supposed to be here. He's in the building. I believe he's handling your first and only ordinance.
I believe that's the case. Yeah, I have my notes right here. We'll just.
I can take that.
Well, last week Ms. Sprague was giving legal advice, and so maybe we'll just toss it.
We
to
can
her.
just keep doing that.
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that?
Stay away from that.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't here to kick me, so.
There you go. I was worried I was going to have to take your ordinance, Sean. Just in the nick of time.
Be tough to do without me 2 weeks in a row.
We wouldn't manage.
It was a Maggie happened. Maggie happened. Maggie happened.
Getting underway in about 20 seconds.
Yeah. 5, 4, 3.
Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for this evening, March 5th, 2024. Before we get underway, would you bow your heads in prayer with me? Heavenly Father, as we come to you this evening to discuss matters concerning the city of Defiance, we ask that you are present amongst us, that you give us wisdom. Lord, help us speak the truth, yet with gentleness and respect. Help us care for the city, but more importantly, that we care for the individuals who have entrusted us to discuss these issues. Lord, please guide us so that with our words and our actions and our attitudes, we can build each other up and glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. This meeting is called to order. Let the records show that all the members of council are present this evening. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any liaison meeting reports or requests? Do we have any comments from council this evening? Mr. Esty.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to bring back the fireworks ban from the table, put it back on the council's agenda.
All right, we have a motion to remove the fireworks ban ordinance from the table to put it back on the council agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Crutch. Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Esty?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
All right. And that issue will be on our agenda for next week.
One other thing also, I do have a proposed motion that I will make next week. And what I'd like to do is share the information with council. So for the sake of time, since we all have our individual ideas of how to make this thing work best, that, you know, if nothing else, it'll be a thought starter for everybody. And I'll share that with you. Hand it out to you.
Oh, please do. And then
I'm not going to
members-
discuss it today. I'm just going to basically hand it out so you can
So
take
they can do
it's
the
your
review.
homework.
Yeah, you're assigning homework for them to look over between now and next Tuesday. Well prepared, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
as those are passing around, Mr. Mast.
I just wanted to make note that the fire department was here this evening with their new ladder truck, and we got to take a look at that, and I did get to take a ride up in it, and it is a large piece of equipment, very shiny, lots of lights, and lots of safety features, so hopefully they can get that in action fairly soon when it's fully outfitted, and it'll help us out.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from council? All right. Mr. Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. First off, I'd like to commend Councilman Mast on his bravery for being willing to go up that high in the new aerial platform when, you know, the rest of us kind of stayed down below, but looked good from up there.
I was told it's lots steadier than the old one, so it was not bad at all.
Excellent. So the other point is, as council requested last week, the police chief is here if there are any questions about issues with fireworks. Obviously, we've pulled that ordinance from the table. We will discuss that next week. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about the fireworks, the laws, how they specifically enforce any of those issues, not only the chief, but he's brought some patrolmen and a lieutenant with him. So feel free to ask any questions. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Hancock?
Is this open where we should ask now, or should we wait?
That would be up to you as council.
Sure, go ahead.
From my understanding, and I think we've had some information, if the fireworks is banned and you are confiscate the material, do you have to call a certain service to come in and remove that banning fireworks, bottle rockets, whatever it may be?
We really don't have the facility that meets the NFPA standards as far as storage of fireworks. There's strict guidelines on that because they are combustible. What we would do is we wouldn't even keep them as evidence. We would take them, and the one way we can do it, we'd photograph them, we'd soak them and destroy them in buckets of water is what we would do.
So we could destroy them, we don't have to contact another agency.
If we did contact another agency, it'd be calling in like one of the bomb squads to take care of that or something like that. I don't really think that's a viable option for us to call in a bomb squad to dispose of fireworks.
For a bottle rocket. Okay, thank you, that was thank you.
Mr. Rusty?
Is that at an expense to the city?
Generally, they don't charge for something like that, but they would not necessarily make it a priority either. They would say, if you could store that somewhere when we're up in the area, we'll come pick it up. Now, if it was something they have come up and disposed of, somebody turned in a Civil War type era cannonball that actually they thought was ordnance in it, that they came up and they took care of that and detonated that right away. So there's been a couple times there has been an ordinance they've come up and taken care of. That's more of a imminent threat than what fireworks are.
I've personally experienced it. I was with Sergeant Skyver a few years back where a fireworks mortar was found in someone's yard that hadn't detonated. And we didn't know what it was quite at first, but he contacted the bomb squad and they essentially said they weren't going to come down for it, but gave us the directions, like Chief said. We ended up putting it in a container of water to dispose of it. That was it.
This is Lieutenant Monholland, if you guys haven't met him yet. He's my newest lieutenant to the force, so.
Welcome on. Mr. Mast?
Chief, my biggest question, I guess, is on the enforcement end of it. What does it take to successfully enforce the law as it stands and any future ban that we might put out there? What would it take to issue citations?
Well, we can issue citations on a lot of stuff, okay? And whether we enforce it or not really dictates to what type of offense that is. I'll be honest with you, the only time in my 20-year career I've ever cited somebody for fireworks is when somebody in the middle of third shift lit off probably about a 4 to 6 inch mortar in the middle of Third and Wayne, and we actually found him. And I mean, you're talking mortar like that went off in downtown and did that. We actually located that subject and were able to do that. But most of the time when we encounter the fireworks, if we find them, it's usually a warning, and hey, next time we come back, then we're gonna cite you. We don't usually, it's not one of those violations that we typically cite on first offense.
Is there certain circumstances that you need to have in place to make a citation? Do you have to see evidence of something? I mean, if you get a call for these
Yes.
complaints about the fireworks after
Yes.
hours or outside of the parameters of the state law,
Correct.
what has to happen for you
Yeah,
to?
what we, that's one of those things we had to prove that that person actually set it off. If we can't prove that person's the one that set it off, it's not one of those ones that we're gonna make a citation on presumption. Got anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's really difficult, cause a lot of these times, especially around like, say like 4th of July is obviously the biggest time of year. We got lots of calls coming in at the same time, fireworks going off everywhere, and even if we do find where they're at, cause a lot of times the reporting of them is inaccurate, cause someone on Laddie Street hears something, thinks it's like a block over, when in fact it's across the river or somewhere, further away. So sometimes we don't even locate them, but if we do, there's a lot of times there's a lot of people there and you don't know, you might see the tubes or the debris from it, maybe if you find it, but a lot of times you don't know who it was, and you got like 10 people that are partying.
And especially now, I mean, during certain times, like if we're at the Halloween or the fireworks detail, you see them go up everywhere, but we can't divert forces to go take care of those at that time. It's what type of priority of calls coming in at the time too. Obviously, a fireworks call is going to take lesser precedence than other types of calls that we're handling. With a minimum staffing of 4 officers, there's quite a few times those calls might come in that we're not going to be responding to for a while because my 4 officers are tied up. Max officers I can have on a shift is 7. At one time, I was 8 assigned, but there's very few days we ever have 8 or 7 or 6. Just to let you know, I had one of my clerks run a couple stats, and last year there were 33 fireworks complaints that we handled. We handled a total of 19,956 calls to service. In that, I just got some comparable complaints that might relate to what guys might be doing compared to when fireworks calls are coming. We had 918 unlock calls, 57 bicycle complaints, 204 disabled vehicles, and 292 parking complaints. So that's, I just had my clerk guys pick up some stats that you might see that come in as a routine calls that we'd be getting at the same time and stuff that. But just to show you the amount of actual fireworks calls to get to what we deal on a daily basis, we handle a lot more other things than fireworks complaints. Now, Lieutenant did make a good comment prior to this that maybe the fireworks calls went down last year due to the fact that there's so many times they are allowed to be shot off compared to previous years. But typically, even when they were completely illegal, we really didn't get too many calls with them except for 4th of July and sometimes on New Year's Eve and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Concur?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Engel?
I think you probably answered my question, but if, let's say we get 2 or 3 days that we can do fireworks, you're still not going to probably have the people there, the officers there to get there in time. If they call, let's say somebody sees them, takes a shot on their camera and finds it,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Can anything be done there? And that's a whole wild thing.
It's typically an offense that we're gonna talk to in more information. By law, we can arrest at any time or cite on any time on any violation. I don't cite every jaywalker in downtown Defiance. I don't cite everybody that, fails to even stop at a stop sign. My officers write warnings on those. There's a lot of stuff that we will give an officer's discretion allows us to handle it without being an arrestable offense or making those arrests. And frankly, I don't think you want the police department being a Gestapo type agency where we arrest everybody for every type of offense.
Thanks.
Mr. O'Donnell?
A quick point of clarification, Mr. President, and I think this might address some of the confusion with some of your constituents. There are certain offenses in our code that are property or in rem offenses, offenses against the property.
Yes.
Nuisance, building code violations, where a defendant can't come in and say, well, I didn't put the nuisance condition there, somebody came in and dumped it. That's not a defense. Fireworks ordinance is not one of those offenses.
No, correct.
It's an offense against the person. So they
It's
have
more
to
of a
build
offense against the peace.
Yeah, they have to build the case against the individual defendant rather than, oh, it was just there on the property. And with our beyond a reasonable doubt standard in the courts, the evidence has to be substantial.
Correct.
And when they get to a house party and there's, fireworks have gone off and all the party goers are doing this, you really don't have any options but to give warnings. We'll catch you in the act next time.
That's correct.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes, you mentioned, or you answered this partly earlier, and I guess I'm just gonna ask again. Like when the shift changes, comes in, the officers that are on duty that shift are assigned a responsibility throughout the city, correct? In other words, like you have like the four quads of Defiance and however you do it, but anyways, you don't want everybody all in one area.
It's up to shift supervisors, they decide to assign a zone or not. Typically, the guys don't congregate and they're just directed to do that. We don't typically even have time to be in
Yeah,
a zone.
we can see where we're at on our computers, so I know where every other officer's at, and we do a pretty good job of really policing ourselves to not like all be like on the east side.
What Lieutenant's referring to is each of our cars have GPS and we are able through mapping to see where cars are every time. In fact, I mean, we have on our phones that I can be at home if I want to see where my guys are, I can punch in my phone and see where my officers are, so.
And I guess the reason why I'm saying that is because it's like, I think we've been saying, like, if there is a complaint, so on and so forth, or whatever, you're not gonna get all the officers to go to that one area, you know.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Councilman Uresti, because there are times that my officers will be all at one complaint. If I have a domestic, that usually takes at least 2 officers. If I have a serious injury accident, that might take 2 or more officers. And there's quite a few times that 1 or 2 calls can have my whole shift tied up.
I'd say to add to that, like especially 4th of July time where we see a lot of these fireworks, we're typically responding to disturbances during these times too. So we got 2 officers tied up on that, and then these like fireworks calls, noise complaints start stacking up, because I mean they go to the back burner at that point until we can free up to handle them.
Yeah, because typically the weekends are louder. Weekends where people tend to have more of a social gathering, and we're responding to other types of complaints resulting from that being disturbances or actual fights or public intoxications. Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Waxler?
So I heard you say a little bit ago that since these new laws come out, there's been less complaints because there's more days to do it, basically.
That was something that Lieutenant mentioned. I'm like, you're right. There probably is, because we'd be getting, some of those weekends we'd be getting calls for them all the time when they're illegal. But now the public is aware that they're allowed in certain times. So certain times we're not even getting the calls because they know it's legal to shoot them off at those times.
So then you go back to the fact that the ones that are shooting them off, but it's not at the legal time, aren't going to stop anyway. They're going to continue shooting them off. If they're doing it illegally now,
That's correct.
stopping the law, changing the law, adding the law, whatever, isn't going to stop it.
You're correct on that assumption, yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Crutch?
But I also know that since we have so many days, that most of the calls that from my constituents have told me is because it's after hours. They're doing it from 11:30 to midnight or whatever, so they're not following even the law that we have in place right now. They're doing it later than time, so that's just a little
I think that's what
FYI.
Mr. Waxler was referring to.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not going to stop. If they're going to do it and they want to do it, they're going to do it. I mean,
Mr. Rusty?
Yeah, I think there's 8 events in the books in regards to firework where it's permissible. So in essence, I think some of the comments we heard at the in other meetings that we've had were like it seems like it's all year round. And I think a lot of it, we tend to notice that it's more on the 4th of July, but it could very well be throughout the year. And what restrictions apply to the 4th might not apply to other holidays throughout the year. So it's probably one of those things where education probably needs to be, you know, at the forefront, and at the same time, some people are aware of what which fireworks are permissible for that day or whatever. Others do not, so it's like, if I don't know, I'm gonna complain.
And you're exactly right. Some people know that regardless of whether or not it's a religious holiday and they practice that religion or anything else, that nothing in the law says you have to. They will set them off because they're legally allowed to set them off those times, and they know the times, the dates, and everything else. You are correct. Some people take every aspect and opportunity to
Right.
be able to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you for being our guest this evening.
If you don't mind for 2 seconds, we can introduce our new patrolman too.
Please do.
Samuel.
Taking questions from the audience.
How's it going, everybody? I'm the newest officer at Defiance. I actually just got out of the academy about 2.5 months ago, and as you can probably tell, I'm pretty young, so 22. I don't really know what to say. I mean, I've only lived in Defiance probably about 1.5 years.
Where are you from?
I'm actually from Monroe, Michigan, so about 1 hour and 20 minutes northeast. I grew up in Michigan, and my family kind of migrated down here. I got a sister in Perrysburg and whatnot. So I haven't been here too long, but I mean, as I can tell, it's been a pretty nice city. I mean, believe it or not, we're actually pretty busy on calls most of the time too, which is a weird thing. I wasn't kind of expecting that, but other than that, thank you guys for having me up here. And do you have any questions?
Yes, what's your name?
Samuel Neely. Yep.
Neely?
Yep, Neely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Thank
Nice
you.
to
I
have you,
appreciate it.
Samuel.
Thank you.
Did you, I'm sorry, did you happen to say why your interest was in Defiance?
Yeah, my family moved here, so it's kind of just like a family interest. Like I moved here for family.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Mack?
That's all at this time, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to bring to council's attention a bill that will come before you next week. We plan on bringing before you next week. Believe it or not, it's been almost 5 years since council passed the initial DORA legislation, the Defiance Outdoor Freshman Area legislation. And section 4301.82 requires legislative authority of the municipal corporation to review the operation of that DORA region every 5 years, and either renew it or dissolve the area, and to do so by ordinance. We will, if we haven't already, we will be running advertisements in the Crescent News, alerting the public of that fact. And so next week, you will see before you an ordinance to continue that Defiance Outdoor Refreshment Area for another 5 years.
Okay. Mr. Waxler?
Can I ask why the chief's here? Have you had any big issues with the door?
No, we have not, and I was possibly concerned about how it was going to occur and what was going to happen, and really the patrons that participate in DORA are very responsible. I don't believe we've made one disorderly arrest out of anybody that participates in DORA. It's been a beneficial thing. Everybody that we see has the DORA cups. They are very responsible for it. The business owners work with us as far as the major events that we have, that they do not do the DORA if we request it. Like you're not gonna see DORA walk down Halloween parade and stuff, and during Rib Fest, they respect that as well, and they're very good about that. And DORA has my full endorsement actually, because I think it's been a very viable outlet for people to come downtown, and that's sort of what we want to do with it, is bring people to downtown and see what a nice place it is and how they can bring other businesses or other business to the downtown businesses. So yeah.
Good, I was just curious why he's here. I thought it was a good time to ask.
Good question.
And I mean, just for added to that, my office has not prosecuted any open containers involving door items. Doesn't mean it didn't make it to our level, but you're saying it hasn't even happened at the enforcement level. Okay.
No, they've been really good about it.
I'm sure that's something the public would want to know, you know, before.
And Ms. Mack, Mr. President, just so you know, we'll be here, next week to answer questions about, you know, how the business side of the DORA is doing, how the bars and restaurants are building up their DORA program.
Excellent.
That's all I have for today.
That's it. Ms. Spray.
I just have two purchase orders. The first one's for streets, 2024-00745, Clark Mosquito Control Products. So, it's not a fun purchase, but it'll help us all out. 24,462.50. And then the second one's for engineering, 2024-00737, Treasurer of State of Ohio, ODOT Urban Paving, 16,644. And that's all I have for tonight.
Oh, well, thank you. We do have one item of legislation for discussion this evening. Before we get to it, last time when we were together, we voted on Charter Review Committee personnel. Now, since then, one of the members of the Charter Review Committee, Tim Holtzberry, has been let us know that he's unable to make the commitment, he's unable to make the meetings, and so we have an opening. I've followed up and talked to individuals about being on the Charter Review Committee. I especially wanted someone from the downtown area, the downtown business area. I think that would be valuable input for such a thing, and hopefully going forward with a bit more of awareness, people who are involved in downtown businesses might consider that they would be good options to be on the Charter Review Committee, as well as other committees and boards to be involved in some of the decisions being made. But this evening, we do have one name available for consideration to be on the Charter Review Committee. We get to go through and vote yes or no to see if we want to fill that position with the candidate. Even though it's just one name, it's something that we should take a crack at. If the person is voted in, then they can get right down to business. If not, then we can field for more candidates. Currently, we have Daryl Handy as the option for consideration this evening. So going through and voting yes or no, yes, you do want Daryl Handy to be on the Charter Review Committee, or no, we should look around. I'll go down and I will ask Mr. Uresti, yes or no? Yes? Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And Mr. Engel?
Yes.
All right. Daryl Handy will be our fifth member. I think he's a good candidate and has a good understanding of what's going on and how to handle it. So the one issue that we do, item of legislation before us, is a first reading. An ordinance vacating the right-of-way between Agnes Avenue and Cleveland Avenue in Knapp and Hayes addition to the city of Defiance. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The right-of-way in question here is a 12-foot unimproved, unused alley between Agnes and Cleveland Avenues in Mr. Engel's ward. And the applicants for the vacation are the co-executrices of the estate of George Taylor, who at the time of his life owned many properties in that part of the city. And Mr. Taylor's estate is attempting to unify the parcels in order to make them more marketable for possible sale. And the city engineer has reviewed this application, found no utilities in this right-of-way, nothing to give her concern. There are utilities and part of the reason is there are utilities in this adjacent right-of-way, Maggie Avenue. It's a larger right-of-way. They're not proposing to vacate that at this time. And all the parcels in that subdivision of lots still have access through other rights-of-way. Planning Commission reviewed this vacation request at the February 20th meeting and recommended vacation to you. And just as a reminder, section 905.19A does not permit a suspension of the rules and calling of the question of right-of-way vacation legislation. Requires 3 full readings. Therefore, a motion to suspend and call the question would not be appropriate here.
So while it does need to go to 3 full readings, do we have any questions for Mr. O'Donnell in these regards? No?
Motion to let lie.
We have a motion to let lie. Second. Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
Mr. Mast,
Yes.
Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
Mr. Engel,
Yes.
and Mr. Resty.
Yes.
All right, we will let this lie until we get together next time. Before we adjourn, we do have a time for citizens' concern. I do know that the topic of fireworks is an issue of concern. With a motion to untable the issue, we can have discussion as far as the advisability of taking it off the table, but as far as discussing, amending or not amending, that would need to be up on our agenda for discussion at any time next week. But if there are citizens' concerns as far as the advisability of untabling the topic and discussing it, you can speak your mind.
Ralph Hahn, 901 Wilhelm Street. I'm glad Chief Schaefer came here tonight. He was one of my enablers for starting this conversation back in December. I heard several comments a little bit ago about authorized day and times. And this is for the chief. Does authorized day and times make it legal? To meet the
Mr. Hahn, what I was just saying is, with the ordinance being a motion to untable it, for discussion this evening, we can discuss the advisability of untabling it or tabling it. As far as discussing the actual ordinance or any amendments, that would have to wait till next week. So now,
I'm asking about the state law.
right, that is.
I'm asking about the state law.
Right, which is
I'm not asking about the ordinance. I'm asking about the state law with their chief here.
Mr. President, I'm going to object to the legal questioning. I mean, he doesn't have all the facts of these particular circumstances, whether.
Right, and this is a city council meeting. If you have questions for council, you can ask us. If you have a question for the chief of police, there's the police department just down the way. You can talk to the chief of police.
I did that.
Then that would be the format to do that, not a city council meeting.
Well, there's not much that I can talk about then, is there?
Which is why the
Correct.
caveat of we can discuss the advisability of untabling the ordinance, or we'll actually be discussing the ordinance and amending it or whatever the motion will be next week. Mr. Resty.
If Mr. Hahn has a comment, he can make a comment. It's just that he wouldn't be able to direct a question to somebody onto a specific item. If he has a comment he wants to make, I think that's what the 5 minutes are for.
Right. If
So,
you
if he has a comment, then that would be probably where, if he has that.
That's a good distinction, yes.
Okay, so we'll not talk about the fireworks ordinance. We'll talk about the noise ordinance. Is that right?
That would be a separate subject.
Okay. 509.08. Noise means any undesired sound. No person shall make or continue or cause to be made or continued any unnecessary, excessive, or offensive noise which annoys, disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of the others within the city. That has not been talked about, and noise certainly comes into play all over the city. So that's another point that I wanna make. There's a lot more, but I guess I'm just tied up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn for this evening?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor of adjourning for this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right,